So you've tried to learn a new language. You memorized hundreds of words, bought a new grammar book, and even maintained a 200-day Duolingo streak. But despite all that, you can barely string a basic sentence together. And eventually, you give up, convincing yourself you're just not good at languages. But here's the truth. Learning a language has much less to do with talent than you think. You've just been using a method that works against how your brain actually learns. Once you learn how to work with it instead, everything changes. You'll build real relationships, unlock opportunities you never had access to, and find a new voice, one that's unapologetically confident but still yours. But first, let's talk about one of the biggest obstacles to getting there, the tool most language learners start with: textbooks. Think about your high school language class. You probably spent years memorizing verb tables and vocab lists, yet you still had to rely on hand gestures and apologetic smiles with native speakers. And that isn't your fault. Your brain actually has two different systems to store long-term information. The first handles facts, like grammar rules and vocab you have to consciously think about. The second handles skills. Fluency in a language depends heavily on this system. It lets words flow naturally without needing to translate in your head. But unfortunately, the traditional textbook approach often leans heavily on the first system. That's why you can know a word but not use it. Why you can pass tests but freeze in real conversations. So the question is, how do you get your second system to do the heavy lifting? Well, one person who figured this out was Hungarian polyglot Kato Lom, who worked as both an interpreter and translator in around 16 languages. Her method? Reading novels without a dictionary. On the first pass, she would try to just figure out the plot, skipping complex descriptions and words she didn't understand. On the second pass, she would start to identify grammatical structures and key vocabulary that kept showing up. Only on the third and final pass would she look up words that she still couldn't guess from context. This worked for a simple reason. When your brain is focused on understanding meaning, it naturally starts extracting patterns. Once you implement this into your learning strategy, everything changes. Language stops being something you study and becomes something you absorb instead. And here's the thing, you don't have to do this with just novels. You can apply the same principle to video games, TV shows, podcasts, anything you enjoy that uses real language, not unnatural textbook dialogues. So, is this an excuse to binge watch that newest Netflix show everyone's talking about? Absolutely. But here's the key. You want content that's just understandable enough to follow without getting lost. The I mostly get this, but I'm still catching new things zone, where you understand about 90% or more of what's going on. Anything easier and you'll learn slower. Anything harder and you'll likely just give up. So how do you actually find content at the right level? Well, start with something you already know. For example, if you've seen K-pop Demon Hunters 3 times, watch it again dubbed in the language you're learning. You already know the girl sealed the Honmun. Now your brain can focus entirely on the language itself. Or if you're a complete beginner, try children's content. And yes, I know, watching Peppa Pig as someone above the age of 4 feels ridiculous. But kids' shows are language learning goldmines. Short sentences, clear context, and slow enough for your brain to actually process what's happening. As you improve, move to native content. YouTube is perfect for this. Find channels about topics you actually care about. Tech, cooking, fitness, travel, whatever you'd watch in your native language anyway. But regardless of the content level, the principle remains the same. When you keep encountering a word and still can't figure it out from context, that's your signal to look it up. And these days, looking things up is easier than ever. For example, free browser extensions like Language Reactor let you click on any subtitle word for instant definitions. Readlang Web Reader does the same thing for articles and web pages. But here's the thing, even if you watch hundreds of hours of content or read half the internet, you won't suddenly become fluent. Because understanding a language and actually producing it are different skills. The good news is that all of that watching, reading, and listening has built a massive library of patterns in your brain. You just need to build the reflexes to actually use them. And how do you actually do that? Well, you start talking, even if it's just to yourself. Seriously, You don't need a conversation partner, and you don't need perfect grammar. You just need to force your brain to generate language. For example, narrate what you're doing, describe your surroundings, convince yourself to actually go to the gym. It feels weird at first, but then you realize words start coming to you faster when you speak. And this isn't just a subjective feeling. Research suggests that talking to yourself helps you plan sentences and can make them flow more smoothly. The only problem is, you're not getting any feedback, which means you're not noticing the gaps in your knowledge. For that, you need people. And yet, despite having so many options, like language exchange apps and affordable online tutors, this is where a lot of people get stuck. They're worried about sounding stupid or not being good enough, so they avoid the very thing that would actually make them fluent. But here's a trick many polyglots use to get past that fear. Play a character. Specifically, when you speak the language you're learning, step into a slightly different version of yourself, an alter ego if you will. Then, decide how that version of yourself speaks. Maybe your Korean self is bolder in conversation. Maybe your Turkish self speaks a bit slower and more intentionally. This tiny identity shift might sound like a gimmick, but it actually does something powerful. It completely reframes how you think about mistakes. When you mess up, it's not you failing. It's your alter ego collecting data points and sharpening its instincts. All of a sudden, speaking imperfectly becomes one of the most powerful learning tools you have, because every mistake brings you a little closer to fluency. So download that language exchange app and schedule a call. Book an online lesson for some structured practice, or attend a language meetup in your city. Ask your partner or tutor for focused feedback on just one or two things: pronunciation, a specific grammar point, or whatever you're struggling with. Targeted practice like this beats the vague, just correct me when I'm wrong. Over time, as you keep showing up to these conversations, something amazing happens. You catch yourself thinking in the language, responding without translating. Eventually, it stops feeling foreign. It just becomes a part of who you are. So keep at it. Weave the language into your daily life, and everything else follows. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.